Welcome everyone for today's online panel discussion on blockchain patents and innovation. So this is going to be relevant for anyone who thought about or is interested in filing a patent in this space. And we have several experts to talk about this. They will go in depth on who they are and what they work on right after this intro. But just to quickly summarize, Philipp Sandner from Frankfurt Blockchain Center, who has also experience in the patent world, Justus from Karo IP, Marc from Rimon Law in the US, and Tony from the startup perspective at AZHOS, who is going through this process right now. Yeah, before we get started, as always, we try to make this as interactive as possible. So Philipp will lead the discussion. But if you as an attendee want to contribute or you have a question to any of the panelists, this is the WhatsApp group where you can ask that question. And if there's enough time, then Philipp will bring it up and it will be discussed with the panelists. If the QR code doesn't work, you also have the link in the WhatsApp, in the email that you received from Eventbrite. So there's the Zoom link and then below is the WhatsApp link. Just click on it, you'll be in the group and you can ask any questions that you want. I hope you enjoy this afternoon talk, and I'll hand over to Philipp now.
Yeah, thanks very much, Jan, for organizing all this. It's a lot of effort. How many people we have? Okay, there should come, I think, 30, 40 more in the next couple of minutes, as always, right? And today we'd like to talk how blockchain goes hand in hand with patents. It's an interesting topic because with patents, you could have seen the uprise of blockchain technology 6 to 7 years ago already. Plus, at the same time, it's quite difficult to protect pure IT and computer algorithms with technology. Therefore, we will also learn today how you actually can patent technological IT innovations, how this could potentially work, if at all. And we also will talk about whether it makes sense to file for patents, because patents will take some years to get granted, sometimes longer than startups, for example, exist up until they become bankrupt in some rare occasions. Therefore, I think this is also rather important to talk to. Yeah, I'm happy to have Marc Kaufman here from the US, right? Please let us also know what time it is at your place in a second. Then we have here Justus Kreuels sitting in Düsseldorf. I guess he's working at a German patent law company, and Tony Oehm probably sitting in Frankfurt. He's not a lawyer, but he runs a company in an area where physical technology like sensors is meeting blockchain technology, so he would bring the entrepreneur's perspective to this panel. I would propose that we start by everybody quickly presenting himself and his viewpoint on blockchain technology and the topic of patents. And maybe Marc, would you like to get started to quickly present yourself and your company, of course?
Sure. Thank you, Philipp. And I want to first say I really appreciate what Disrupt Network is doing. I think that communities like Disrupt are really critical for fostering innovation in emerging technologies, and keep up all the good work. I appreciate it. Thanks for hosting this today. Yeah, as Philipp noted, my name is Marc Kaufman. I am a patent attorney. I'm based in Washington, DC. I'm a partner at the firm of Rimon PC, and we are an international law firm, general practice firm with a large IP practice, with offices throughout the US and Europe and Asia, and a little bit in a couple other continents. And I do a lot of work with fintech technologies. In fact, it goes back before they called it fintech. I won't tell you how long I've been doing that work. And more recently, a lot of work related to blockchain technologies. And I wear a couple different hats also. I am a co-founder of the Blockchain Iep Council, which is an initiative of the Chamber of Digital Commerce. And the objective of the Blockchain Iep Council is simply to help blockchain innovators manage intellectual property risk. We do that through some communities. One of them is LOT Network, License on Transfer. It's at lotnet.com. You might want to take a look at that. I consider myself sort of an unofficial evangelist for LOT. Also, I serve as on the advisory board of several blockchain projects. I'm happy to be here today.
Excellent. You want to add something on the figures, or should we show them later on? Maybe we do this later, right? The development over time, the rising.
Yeah, no, you want me to show that real quickly now? I can do that. That might set a good background or a good basis for discussion. So let me share the screen, and I think, can we all see that now?
Yes.
Just, to give you an idea, in this study, this is a patent study. This was done in May, I believe, last time it was updated. So it's woefully out of date because of how dynamic the space is, but it gives you an idea. These are worldwide publications of patent families, groups of patents over time. And you can see in 26, related specifically to blockchain and distributed ledger technology. This does not include more general cryptography patents and computer networking patents and all that. And you'll see that we have sort of an exponential curve. The gray bar at the end at the right in 2020 is just a linear extrapolation over the May data. And it shows that we would expect to see in 2020 over 10,000 patent families published worldwide. So this just shows you that there are there will be thousands and tens of thousands of patents related specifically to blockchain over the coming years that innovators are going to have to deal with and navigate around.
I think that's a perfect introduction because what we are discussing now is something we could potentially discuss in the next years again, because the lines or the bars which you have shown do not tend to be decreasing, right? So there should be more dynamic in the next year. So good for you in this business, right? Same for you, Justus. Maybe you also want to quickly present yourself and your law firm.
Yeah, so I'm co-founder and partner of the law firm Karo IP located in Düsseldorf. I'm patent attorney since about 10 years, and I started in the field of automotive industry. So my subjects I'm working on there right now is connected cars, autonomous driving, navigation, all things where blockchain aspects might be relevant, become relevant, we will see. Yeah, I was always strong in IP litigation stuff. So Düsseldorf is a very important court in this regard. I've been involved in telecommunication cases here in the last years, and yeah, to focus on blockchain was a little bit always also a strategic thing, because yeah, a lot of people expect that this might be a new field of patent wars in the future. I'm not that sure about this. I think we can discuss this later, but nevertheless, I think it's a very interesting technology, and yeah, it's worth to think about it and to talk.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And then also please, Tony, present yourself and your company.
Perfect. Yes, in comparison to my fellow panelists, I'm not a lawyer and nor a patent attorney. So I will be presenting the startup perspective on patents, blockchain patents. I'm the CEO of AZHOS, and we are currently dealing with supply chain automation and financing based on blockchain technology. We were also involved in the field of fiat on blockchain technology, which we are currently using to automate different payment processes in the industry. Regarding blockchain patents, we are currently filing a patent together with the University of Hamburg, dealing with the intersection of sensors and blockchain technology. So we chose the path to focus on an easier field to file patents, which is basically a hardware technology, and combine this with our blockchain case. So we are currently like living the process of this patent application, and therefore I hope I can contribute to this part.
Excellent. This sounds fascinating, but you didn't choose Justus or Marc's law firm, right?
Not
in the future, especially if you want to file your patent in the US, probably, if this is the plan. Okay, excellent. Maybe let's discuss the first question with everybody, talking about what are you currently seeing in this field. Apparently, China is more active than other countries. That's my feeling, but please let me know if I'm wrong here. And also, Justus, I think Germany is not that active yet. It might be that this is exactly the reason why you have not so many patents on blockchain on your desk yet. German industry is a little bit behind here, in my personal opinion. But what is your current observation about the market? What are people filing patents for? What movements do you see? Which companies, which sub-technologies, and so on? Who want to start?
Marc, shall I? I'd be glad to start. Yeah, I am personally in my practice seeing patents, and what I'm personally seeing as far as subject matter, it seems to reflect overall the studies will be shown of what have been filed, but there are a lot of patents being filed that are to specific architectures and interfaces of blockchain to specific applications, like supply chain, like Tony's, anti-counterfeiting, like Everledger. Blockchain seems to work very well for settlement of, for example, foreign exchange between banks. We're seeing a lot of patents related to that type of thing, and interfacing smart contracts with data. You know, smart contracts, as many of you are aware, are actually executable code that runs on a blockchain, which often needs data from off-chain. For example, if it's a stock trading platform, you of course need to know prices of stocks and volumes and all that, and that comes from off-chain. And so there's a lot of technology and a lot of patents being filed to interfacing that executable code with what they call oracles, which are the real world sources of data. We're also seeing some specific implementations of blockchain itself, new consensus mechanisms, various ways of taking data on and off chain, and this relates to smart contracts too, but it mostly directed at optimizing the processing speed and the scalability of blockchain. Because as many of you are aware, one of the big problems is that blockchain is sort of inherently slow, relatively slow and non-scalable. So that's the technologies we're seeing. Justus, I'll let you jump in. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I see the highest number of applications in the basic technology. So transactions, everything about the infrastructure to operate a blockchain. So that's the field with the highest numbers, I believe. But when I look at the grantings and in fact also the granting proceedings where they might become successful in Germany, so the numbers are not that high that they are in the US, and therefore it's possible to have a more detailed look into each single case if you're interested via the online databases. Then my impression is that the fields of a particular application of blockchain solutions are the more interesting fields. So I think, should mention the healthcare field, and the other field is everything about autonomous driving, connected cars, charging, so everything in this field. So I see that there is a very high activity of the automotive industry because of uncertainty, perhaps as well from other reasons, like the diesel electric car issues we have here in Germany, to establish in future markets. And they have also very high financial power still to enforce their patent and to get them. So that's my feeling, that this seems to be a field where a lot of things happens regarding blockchain right now. The basic infrastructure, I'm a little bit concerned whether it is really possible to get these patents at the end, because a lot of things are just published in scientific papers, not patentable anymore. Many ideas, was there and are discussed and cannot be patented. And therefore, we will see whether this really will become a relevant issue. So basic patents for blockchain technology, I think this is a difficult field. That's perhaps a short view from my perspective on the patent market.
Okay, let's dig a little bit more into this question. Maybe Marc, this question for you. In case you are publishing secrets which you are later on wanting to file a patent on, then you cannot get the patent anymore because the information has been made public, right? How does this relate to open source? Because many projects in the area of blockchain, they are relying explicitly on open source. So how does this go together with patent protection? Because how can you protect something in case it has previously been open source to some degree?
Yeah, so that's correct, of course, that once something is made public or otherwise commercially used, in most countries it immediately cannot be patented. In the US there's some time there, but at some point it becomes, as Justus said, much of this is already in the prior art and can't be patented. And particularly in the blockchain community, it's a very, there's a culture of open source, and by open source, I mean the broader term of not just open source licensed software, but of just, dedicating things to the public and relying on the network effect to gain adoption. And so that does, as Justus noted, make it very difficult to patent much of the basics of blockchain. For example, Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever they are, just published a paper and put the software out there, and you can't patent. No one can patent it. However, there are a lot of improvements and specific applications and specific architectures that can be patented. Every time you try to adapt blockchain to a new application, whether it be foreign exchange or healthcare data or supply chain, there's almost always some technical innovation that results that makes the blockchain backbone work better with that application. And so we're seeing a lot of patents being filed in those spaces, but it is difficult, and there is an interplay between the open source and patenting, and companies have to be very aware of that and make a conscious decision. Do we want to publish this, or do we want to patent it first, or some combination of the two? The other issue that we've sort of touched upon that makes it difficult, well, let me stop there. I think we'll get to the other patentability issues later on.
Okay, Justus, you want to add something? Maybe like a very related topic is the topic about the question that software by definition cannot be protected, so it needs to be technical in some way, whereas software and technology is disrelated in the blockchain law, to speak very superficially. So we had open source as a road blocker for patents, right? What about the technicity, or what, I don't know the specific term, what's it called? What about this area? How can you still file patents on blockchain technology and IT in this area?
Yeah, I think you have to distinguish between the technicity of the application of blockchain technology. That's in most cases possible if you have input from let's say, the real world, some sensor data or information which is used in some way in a technical environment, and output data which is used for some technical purposes. And then if you have these two ends, and between these two ends you have blockchain technology, then patentability is possible. The other situation is if you have technical solutions in the blockchain itself. So if you are able to show that you handle tokens in another way, which has an impact, that performance is improved, or that latency is reduced, or something like this, then you can also find a technical point in the invention, and then patenting is possible in principle. You always have the problem that the invention must be technical. It is not sufficient if there's just the link to the technique. And yeah, that's then the big point if you want to patent blockchain solutions themselves, and not how they interact with the real world, that a lot of basic ideas are just combined in another way. And then the patent offices often tend to say, okay, no, that's only cryptography or something like this, and then it's not possible. But yeah, it's worth to think about it and discuss for each particular case whether there is a technical aspect in it or not. But I think important to understand is that you should distinguish between the blockchain itself and the way you use it, or the purpose for which you use it. And both fields are suitable to get technicity.
Okay, so maybe has this been, Tony, has this also been a problem with your company, that the patent lawyer said we need to have some kind of physical technology there, sensors, other devices to basically work around this issue that you cannot simply get patents on software, right? Has this also been a problem in your case, and how did you deal with it?
Exactly. So regarding the term startups filing a blockchain patents, I see two big problems. On the one hand, this is the difficulty of the process. So many startups, as you mentioned in the introduction, do not have the time to file a blockchain patent before they publish the technology or use it in a productive environment, which means that currently big corporates, as we can see, IBM, etc., have a big advantage in that term, because they have the money and the time to file those patents that startups wouldn't, because a startup normally doesn't have the time to hold back the technology that they have to use in their business case until it's patented. On the second hand, we also face difficulties because it is currently very hard to patent a software itself. So in our case, we looked at the intersections of hardware and software and tried to focus on what we are changing on the hardware side to enable blockchain technology to work with these devices. And this is patentable in our case. So to give you an example, as we are using sensors to measure inventory levels that are later on coded on a blockchain to be used in further processes, we developed some sort of smart card device that is connected to the sensor and allows the direct pushing of data from a sensor on a blockchain. So it is a hardware device. And as long as we are in like the area of a hardware device, this makes it very easier for us to actually patent this. In this case, we partnered up with a German university to conduct this project. And they also had their suggestions in regards of the patentability. So we try to focus to always have a hardware component in our technology.
Okay, and did it work so far? Is the patent already filed? Is it filed in which countries? You know, it all costs a lot of money. Is it just filed in Germany or Europe? How did you decide there? And what will happen now that you have filed it in the next month and years? What's your expectation here?
currently, we are filing this patent in Germany. So this is for us a first step to secure that kind of technology. To mention that as well, the part we are patenting is not the biggest part of our business case. So we are doing this in terms of a research project, and therefore we are able to hold back the technology until it's really usable and patented. For the next years, we are aiming to extend that patent to other sensors, because with our partner company in Germany, we also have IP on several data types for sensors, etc. So we are aiming at combining all these together. In this case, we really have to focus on the hardware part.
Okay, excellent. Does this make sense, Marc and Justus? Does it make sense to proceed like this? I ask for very specific reasons, because very often it only makes sense to have multiple patents on one and the same invention, because only then you can really avoid competitors to work around this technology, right? Does it really make sense to really file one single patent on some specific item, or should you really better take it serious and file an entire bundle of patents?
I'll take a stab at that. Well, certainly in most cases, a bundle is better than one. You know, and particularly and I say that because, you know, but a bundle costs a bundle. You know, it takes a lot of resources. And it doesn't always mean you file your whole bundle all at once, but it is nice to have sort of what we like to refer to as a picket fence of, you know, barrier, and go at it from different angles. And particularly in view of this issue that Justus and Tony mentioned, that it's very difficult to get broad patent protection for software-based innovations. And this is particularly true in the US, and there's great uncertainty in the US on this issue. We could talk about that alone all day. But we're finding that, as Tony found, you have to put particular technical elements and physical elements into your claims in order to have a patent. So sometimes that means your patent becomes much more narrow. And sometimes you can capture all of the physical ways in a generic claim, but usually you find that you have to get narrower than you like, and you move away from sort of being generic, if you will, on your claim elements. So often it is valuable, and Tony might find this later on, to go back with what are called divisional applications, which are based upon the same disclosure but claim the invention in a different way. And so I do recommend generally for clients, when you have the resources, try to file several applications to different aspects of the invention, because you'll find that the more focus you have, the more likely patent examiners throughout the world are to allow the claims. This is very different than it was, at least in the US 10, 15 years ago, when you're able to get this broad protection all in one application. So you have to be very strategic about it and consider budgets, because patents, of course, can get expensive.
Okay, but so, you know, it does make extremely much sense when you are a large company, you have budget, you know, say Siemens, BMW, or these huge companies. But in case you are a startup, then it's probably much more difficult, because money is probably very scarce. So therefore, what would you recommend to a startup? You know, like start with one patent very cautiously and then file others on the way to go. Because if you file too many patents, then costs are too high, and then as a startup you might risk becoming bankrupt, right? So what would be your recommendation for a startup?
Well, okay, I'll jump in again. I usually recommend that startups try to file a very rich disclosure, a very rich patent application that describes the entirety of their platform or their service as much as we can. And that takes a little more resources than a quick patent application. File that as one patent application, and then use divisionals, depending on where you call them, divisionals or continuation applications, later on based upon that same disclosure, to zero in on the different aspects. But like anything else, you always have to balance budgets. And sometimes as a startup, your patent protection will be less than optimum because, as you say, you don't want to make yourself go bankrupt filing patents.
Okay, Justus, you want to add something?
Yeah, perhaps. So I think you always have to regard the patents as a supplement to the other business strategy you have with your startup. You cannot regard them themselves as a value. It's more an add-on for an investor in this situation that he sees, okay, there is the option to get a monopoly on the specific technology you do. And yeah, the main thing should be the technology. And this is more like a supplement. I think this is the more realistic approach to look on this. And then, you can regard the risk that you don't get the patent as a risk which can be minimized by additional patents. And the more you have, the lower is the risk. So you have a better chance that at least one will protect something really important. But the other aspect is also how many possibly patentable ideas are in your technology. If there's only one, startups should regard this as a chance to protect their business from a completely other perspective than speed, than quick market exploration, and so on. But they should not regard this at their single selling point they have. That's often the fault I see, that there's too much focus on this feature and less focus on regarding this simply as something which helps to improve or increase your other features and selling points you have.
Okay, but then it would make sense for a startup to file a patent, of course, to protect its technology, but also to signal quality to investors, right? So that's a reason which is interesting for startups, regardless of the core function to protect the technology. Does this make sense, as an additional reason to file patent?
I think so, yes. So there should not be a simple paper, yes, that's sure. But it must be something which has a real chance to be patentable, because otherwise you do not be well to your reputation on the market, I think. But if there's something which should be taken serious, then you should file patents for this, I think. Yes.
So you strongly vote against, let's call it fake patent, right? Just for getting the number, that would be the ICO scam variant. This is something which you would recommend to very strictly avoid, but still it makes sense to file a patent for protecting an innovation plus signaling quality. Marc, would you agree?
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. But I'd like to maybe get a little bit off on a tangent, but I think a related tangent, in that a patent is not always the right thing to do for a particular innovation. And we talked about earlier about that the prior art may prevent you from getting a patent. We talked a little bit about the concept of industrial applicability and technical effect, and what we call here in the US patent eligibility, this whole software issue. Maybe you can't get a patent because it's software. You also have to think about what a patent is and the effect of a patent. A patent requires, and the rules are a little bit different throughout the world, but essentially that you teach the world how to make and use your invention, and you give them every detail so they know how to do it. And that you do that in exchange for hopefully receiving protection for a limited period of time. And that can be very good, particularly when something you're doing is user-faced or otherwise can be discovered easily, which is often the case with blockchain. But there are times when an invention is kept behind the firewall, so to speak, either literally or figuratively, and that the world won't figure it out, or isn't likely to figure it out, unless you tell them. And filing a patent application can often give the public and your competitors detailed information that you don't want to give them, okay? Because the patents, as I think I don't know that we said this expressly, they get published. And they get published even before you get a patent. So you have to always think, and this is something I ask all my clients all along, and then when they review a patent application for filing, I always say, is there anything in here that you wouldn't put on a billboard at Piccadilly Circus or name, you know, Times Square, name your big city forum, because everybody's going to know about it. So many cases, the better approach is to maintain the technology as trade secret. Don't tell people exactly how to do it. Hope that they don't discover it themselves, and keep it under wraps, you know, the back end technology under wraps. So you always have to look at that interplay between disclosure, i.e. patents, and trade secret, which is also an option. And you always have to think about that prior to filing a patent application.
Yeah, interesting. So trade secret is basically keeping it private such that nobody knows. Actually, that's it's interesting because I guess that like large-scale corporations are making these thoughts, but if you think of startups, you know, they probably don't make up these thoughts. They just start programming and try to survive, get investors and sales, right? Which is okay, right? Okay, so in case patents are public, then you can of course read them. Did you, in the blockchain area, did you see absolutely fascinating patents out there which could come to real life products in a couple of years? What's your, in case you have read some of key patents out there in the blockchain area, would you like to name a couple of them if there are like really fascinating topics?
A couple come to mind. I don't have the patent numbers in front of me. I just read one yesterday that's very interesting that relates to storing, separating transaction data from sort of the metadata about the transaction, you know, from the type of currency and the timing and things like that, and putting those in different layers off chain and tying that data, I'll call metadata, to the actual transaction that is recorded on the blockchain in a secure way. And this somewhat solves the problem of scalability of blockchain. You know, allows you to extend Bitcoin blockchain, for example, to have a lot of additional data without overwhelming the proof of work consensus mechanism that's inherent in Bitcoin. So that's very interesting. I have seen some patent applications to interfacing these oracles, you know, these off-chain supplies of information in a secure and reliable way to blockchain. I think those have been very interesting. And some particular applications, and some that I've mentioned, supply chain, foreign exchange, particular applications of blockchain technology. A lot of patents on those that I think will be very interesting, will maybe be protected, but have now been made public so others can build upon them.
Hello?
Philipp, are you still there?
I think Philipp is muted.
Yes. Let me see how that happened. I'll check in with him in the meantime.
While you're looking, there's one thing I wanted to mention.
Yes.
We talked about you know, this idea of budgets, patents can be expensive. Should we file, should we not? I think before we end here, the one takeaway I would like to give you, and I'm sure Justus will agree with me, is obtain good patent counsel early on. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. You don't have to spend a lot of time, but there are things you can do that may preserve your rights to a time when you have more money, or at least speaking with somebody like Justus or myself, you can understand the consequences of what you're doing. And what happens to patent attorneys like Justus and myself often is clients come to us and say, oh, I really want to protect this because everybody's copying me. And it turns out long story short, they have taken actions that prevent them from protecting it now. And they disclosed it publicly. So get a good patent attorney early on and work with them, one that you feel you can work with as a partner. And the two best are here on the call.
Also for deciding not to file for the reasons you mentioned. That's also easier to have someone you can talk with who say, okay, no, it's not worth to do it now. This money will be missing for more important things in your startup right now. I think this is also an important aspect, because I often see that people think about they doing something wrong in regards to patents, and yeah, they just need someone who helps them to decide not to do it. That's also an important advice in a lot of situations.
Okay, great. I'm back. Actually, I had an internet issue. I had to restart the router, but it's working again. Sorry. Okay, but I have a couple of more questions to go. There have been in the past some patent wars, right, where companies are trying to basically lock down other companies with their products. Could you see this in happening in blockchain? And another related question is, in case you have decentralized technologies, like be it Ethereum, Bitcoin, decentralized finance, and so on, this technology just runs. There is no patent law, no lawyer, nobody who could stop this technology from running, right? So what happens if such a decentralized running technology is infringing on a patent? What would you do, or what can you do?
Well, there's two good questions. First question, do I see patent wars coming? And my answer is absolutely, if it's not managed properly. And that is the thrust of the purpose of the Blockchain Iep Council. There are these tens of thousands of patents are going to grant, and if they're not managed properly through some community agreements that balance freedom to operate with the rights of patent owners in a reasonable manner, we're going to see two things. We're going to see patent wars between competitors and unnecessary patent suits between competitors. And we're going to see a rise of the dreaded patent troll. Now, the patent troll model is one that's particularly popular in the US because of the legal environment there, but nevertheless has caught on throughout the world. And these are people who buy patents, usually from large companies looking to trim their budget, and or from startups who fail. They buy the patents, and then their business model is to go around the world and assert these patents. And what you end up getting is a letter that says, hey, look, we have these patents. We think you ought to take a license. Pay us €500,000. And you go to your patent attorney, you go to Justus, and he tells you, I think their patent is invalid. I don't think it would cover you, but it's going to cost you probably $100,000 for me to analyze that. And if we try it in Germany, it'll cost, or 100,000 euros. And if we try it in Germany, it'd be 300,000 euros. And if you have to try this in the US, it'll be $2 million US. So often the better answer is to go and negotiate with these patent trolls and pay them maybe 200,000 euros. It's an extortion, and it's going to happen if we don't manage it well. Lot Network is the answer to that. I'd be glad to tell you guys about that at some other point. That's a community that addresses the patent troll issue. I've rambled on. I forgot your second question. So maybe I'll let somebody else address that.
Justus, you want to add something on this question?
Yeah, I'm a little bit, I have another opinion on this. So if I regard the topic of the big patent wars we have in the past, so that's, in fact, that's mainly mobile communication. And we see it now in the field of connected cars, very strong, but in fact, these are in most cases the same patents that had been enforced in the field of mobile phones before. The way how these proceedings usually run is that the guy who buys patents and want to enforce them to get good license contracts, buy the patents and enforce them against companies who earn much money with a product which has a high sales price. Last very important case last week I recognized in the press was Daimler, which was suited in Mannheim by Nokia in this regard. And that's the business. There must be someone who earns a lot of money and who has a very big interest in a license to sell his products, cars in this particular case. And the patents which are enforced are often on very little items in the big product. So in this case, there are communication chips inside the car, in fact, not the car as a whole. And I'm not sure whether the market of blockchain technology will be structured like this. That's for me the question, whether the rules which we see from these proceedings can apply to blockchain patents. I think this is a little bit linked to your second question, whether the distributed structure of blockchain applications might be a reason why it is very difficult to grab an infringer with a patent. Because it's always very easy to move to another jurisdiction if you use blockchain technology in your product. So I'm not sure whether this will really develop in this direction. I can believe that there will be patent wars on blockchain technologies, but it's not sure. We see other fields where the patent lawyer market always discussed that this will be the next big field, like biological gain technologies and something like this. And this also becomes not such a big field of patent wars like the mobile communication stuff. So perhaps I believe sometimes this is also let's say the hope of my business that this will become such a field. I'm not sure whether this will really happen in the future.
Okay, Marc, would you want to add something on this decentralized question? You know,
Yes.
how to basically, from a governance perspective, unstoppable system in case you want to have this with a patent, right?
Yeah, so it's a very good point, and I agree that is a problem from an enforceability standpoint for patents. It's good news for many of the participants because they're not as likely to get sued for patent infringement. For example, if you look at the Bitcoin blockchain, you know, who do you sue? You sue this pseudonymous Satoshi Nakamoto? No, you can't. However, even in Bitcoin, if there were aspects of that are patented, just as an example, there are miners and there are wallet service providers and there are more centralized parties that have patent risk. But really, I think where we're going to see the patent issues and where we're going to see the biggest commercial applications are in these private or consortium blockchains, whatever you want to call them. You know, think of Tony's example of supply chain. You're going to have, you know, IBM has a product and others have products, and you have these consortiums that have legal relationships and agreements that have some centralized management of and secure access to a blockchain. So even though it's distributed amongst the parties, and it may have, you know, thousands of nodes all processing the data, there are more centralized parties or a group of parties that are governing and managing this, providing access, you know, providing consensus and things like that. And I think that's where we'll see patents asserted and the patent risk. So while the distributed or the decentralized nature of blockchain does make it difficult to enforce any intellectual property, I think there are, you know, what I'll call touch points where intellectual property can be enforced against particular parties. And that's good news for owners of intellectual property, bad news for those who feel they may have a risk.
Okay. Tony, what about your company? Did you also do basically the from the other side, what would be required to basically test whether other companies might have patents where you are infringing upon, even though you don't know it, right? Did you check other patents from other companies, or did you check the patent landscape out there when you start operating, or is it your partnering companies doing?
Yes, we are doing this, but only to a limited extent. Maybe to also add to the question of an emerging patent war, I agree with Marc on this point that there will be a patent war at a certain point of time, but only between big corporates. What I see currently is that the startups that are developing technology or developing new applications for blockchain, they're not very much involved with fundamental research, which could be patented, but they're developing technology that tops on existing infrastructure like Ethereum, etc., which means that they are all in an area where they are only able to patent software, etc., which will be very hard and not possible. So I don't think that an emerging patent war would impact a startup environment too much. So I think this will not hinder innovation at some point, at least in the next 2 years. And for us, this means that actually the question if we file a patent on our technology or not is not really impacting our business at this certain point. Still, what is important is that we are dealing with industrial partners, and a patent for industrial partners is always a sign of quality. So our main goal with a patent is not to actually secure the technology against other parties, because actually if IBM will file a patent for the same technology that we are doing, this is not a question if the patent works or if we are secured against this. This is rather a question of scalability. If the IBM files a patent, they will always be able to overtake a startup at a certain point. But actually, for a startup, it will be important to have a patent to get the foot in the door with the big industrial parties. So in this case, it's more than a tool than really essential for a company. It's a tool for sales and for scaling.
Okay, interesting. So maybe Marc and Justus, I'm pretty sure that you must have had some patents in the cloud area, you know, that's out there since 10 years. And probably it also developed very dynamically in the past 15 years, you know, like data centers and all kinds of things. Would you expect that the same path of development and growth is also happening with blockchain technology in the future? You know, like to basically to draw the comparison that the trajectory of cloud computing, the growth, the dynamic is basically mirrored again with blockchain technology, but say 1 decade later. Does this make sense to compare this?
I think it does. I think the growth curve we saw earlier, the exponential curve of filings that we showed at the beginning, that is typical of an emerging technology. That the increase in patents is typical, and we saw that in mobile devices. We saw that in web applications. We saw that in cloud computing. The same thing, just delayed. And that's all part of that and the economic dynamic of a lot of startups, a lot of investment, a lot of failures, eventually a lot of commercial activity are all the ingredients that I think, are the reasons I think we're going to see these patent wars and patent trolls, because we saw it in these other spaces and we'll see it in this space. But I think it's a very similar trend, and I am very confident that blockchain technology will be very ubiquitous in 10, 15 years, just like we all use TCP/IP now, and we don't even have to know how it works, but we know that it shows us pictures of our kids on the phone. We're going to use blockchain the same way, And so yes, getting back to your question, I think that is a very good comparison and a very good analogy.
Okay. Justus, you want to add something on this regard?
No, not really, not really. I'm a little bit more to regard the blockchain aspect, yeah, as a further development of cloud computing technology. Yeah, that's in fact another view on the same situation, I think. Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. So you are rather of the opinion that blockchain technology is basically a subsegment within cloud technology, whereas
yeah, perhaps. I think this at least some aspects of it fit very well to the idea of cloud computing, I think, because if you distribute things and put it outside, then you have to take care of security and to be protected before manipulation. And therefore, these fields are closely linked to each other, I think. Yes.
Okay, interesting. Well, only time will tell. You know, my question was framed in a way that I would expect blockchain technology become an own segment, you know, like next to cloud technology, not hierarchically below.
Okay.
But you know, we cannot estimate this right now. You know, time will tell in the next 5 to 10 years how large this will grow. It's not pretty clear right now.
I agree. And on that point, I think that not only a patented blockchain technology will play a role in the future, but blockchain technology itself could be a very important factor to digitize intellectual property. So this is maybe another viewpoint, and this could actually benefit many startups, because if we can lower the process hurdles and therefore also the cost in the process of securing intellectual property, this will also enable smaller companies to secure their technology. So I think that not only blockchain patents will be a big part of the future, but also blockchain for patenting.
Okay, that was, I think, a very nice closing word already. Anybody of you guys want to add some more closing remarks? No? Okay, then I would basically like to thank you for this very interesting discussion. I myself learned a lot on patents, especially with regard to open source, trade secrets, and then still basically securing proprietary knowledge. I also need to think about this question, how basically is it bad to not be able to stop decentral technologies in case they are infringing on a patent? That's an interesting question, whether even though the answer is pretty clear. And therefore, I think it's best to now hand over back to Jan, who also finds some closing words, right?
Yes. Yeah, thanks Justus, Marc, Tony, Philipp for this discussion. Yeah, for the attendees, we have more events coming up. So just a quick update on that. Next week, we'll have the topic, how can institutional investors benefit from crypto assets, and investing in Bitcoin, why and how for family offices. So some new perspectives there. You find the events on our event web page as always. Yeah, we're just done with the time. So that's it from my side as well. Thanks a lot for joining as an attendee, and thanks to the speakers for finding the time today to discuss this.